Welcome to Life Stories Network, where we bring you powerful family moments that leave lasting lessons. Tonight's story begins on an ordinary evening, but what happened after I returned home from a birthday party would shake me to the core. It is not about the balloons or the cake, but about the words of my own son that opened my eyes in a way I never expected. I had just returned from a close friend's birthday celebration. It was one of those gatherings filled with laughter, loud music, and a sense of escape from the usual routines of life. I felt lighthearted as I drove home, humming to myself, still carrying the sweet aftertaste of cake and the cheerful echo of clinking glasses. But as soon as I walked into my house, I realized the mood inside was far from the joy I had just left behind. My son was waiting for me in the living room. He looked restless, like he had been pacing back and forth for hours. His eyes were sharp, but behind them I could sense a storm that I couldn't yet name. I smiled at him casually, setting down the small gift bag I had brought back, and I asked him what was wrong. I thought maybe he needed help with homework or had a small fight with a friend. I was wrong. He looked at me for a long moment before he finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "Dad," he said, "do you even know what I needed tonight?" The way he said it didn't sound like a question. It sounded like an accusation. I froze, not knowing how to answer, because I didn't even know what he meant. I tried to lighten the moment by joking. "Needed? What? Did you run out of snacks? Or maybe you wanted me to bring you some cake from the party?" But he didn't smile. He didn't laugh. His silence cut through my attempt at humor like a knife. He just kept looking at me, his eyes filling with something heavy that pulled me into guilt before he even explained. Finally, he took a breath, and his words hit me like a wave. "I needed you here, Dad. I didn't need cake. I didn't need gifts. I needed you." My chest tightened as I realized this was not about a small problem. This was about something much deeper. This was about presence, about being there, and I hadn't been. I asked him softly, "What happened? Tell me." My son hesitated, then said, "I waited for you because I wanted to share something important. But when I saw you dress up and leave for that party, I told myself, maybe it's not that important to him. Maybe my words can wait." His voice broke, and so did something inside me. I tried to explain that it was just a birthday party, nothing serious, but he interrupted. "That's the point, Dad. It was nothing serious, but you still chose it over me." His words echoed in my head. I had no defense. I had chosen a moment of fun over a moment that could have been the most important conversation of his young life. I sat down next to him and asked what he wanted to tell me. My heart was racing because I feared what I had missed. What if it was something he had been holding on to for weeks? What if he had been waiting for me to listen? His face showed both disappointment and hope, like he was still deciding whether to open up or shut down. He finally whispered, "I wanted to tell you that I got selected for the school's debate team. I worked hard for this. I wanted to share it first with you." His eyes welled up with tears, and my own followed. I had missed the raw joy of his achievement, the moment he wanted me to be proud, all because I was busy somewhere else. I hugged him tightly, but the hug felt like it came late. The damage was already there. He had doubted his importance to me, even for a moment, and that thought crushed me. It wasn't just about missing his news. It was about the message my absence had sent, that he wasn't my priority. That night, I stayed awake long after he had gone to his room. I thought about all the times I had convinced myself that small absences didn't matter, that kids understand, that they forgive easily, but the truth was staring me in the face. Every choice I made, big or small, painted a picture for my son about where he stood in my life. The guilt weighed on me, but more than that, it taught me something I will never forget. Presence isn't measured in gifts, money, or even words. It is measured in showing up when it matters most. And sometimes, you don't know when those moments are until it's too late. The next morning, I woke up early. My son was still asleep, his door closed, his room quiet. I sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, staring at the wall, thinking about what had happened the night before. His words were still replaying in my mind. "I needed you, Dad." That one sentence had broken me in ways I didn't expect. I thought about how many times he might have needed me and I wasn't there. How many moments slipped by while I convinced myself that work, friends, or social gatherings mattered more. I had always believed I was a good father. I worked hard. I provided for him. I made sure he had everything he needed. But now I wondered, had I confused providing with parenting? Because last night, my son didn't need a roof, or food, or money. He needed presence. He needed my attention. He needed me to look him in the eyes and say, "I'm proud of you." And I had failed. When he finally woke up, I knocked on his door and asked if I could come in. He nodded, and I stepped into his room. He was sitting on the bed with his laptop, pretending to scroll, but I could see he was still hurt. I sat down across from him and said, "I want to hear everything. Tell me about the debate team, every detail. Don't leave anything out." At first, he looked unsure, like he wasn't ready to trust me with that moment again. But slowly he began to share. He talked about how nervous he had been during the tryouts, how his hands were shaking as he held the paper, how he thought he would mess up. Then he smiled faintly, saying the teacher had praised his confidence, even though he didn't feel it inside. He explained how he had prepared for weeks, reading articles, practicing in front of the mirror, and timing his arguments. I listened to every word, nodding, asking questions, and showing him that I was present now, fully present. And for the first time in a long while, I realized that listening is not passive. It is an act of love. It tells someone they matter. It tells them their voice is worth hearing. But then he paused and said something that pierced me again. "I almost didn't go for the tryouts, Dad. I almost gave up, because I kept thinking, what's the point if no one at home even cares?" His voice cracked when he said it, and I had to fight back tears. My absence had not only hurt him in that moment, but it had also nearly robbed him of his courage. I reached across and held his hand, something I hadn't done since he was much younger. I said, "I care, more than you will ever know. I am proud of you. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me, but I promise I'll do better. You matter more to me than anything else." He didn't answer right away, but the way his shoulders relaxed told me that part of him believed me. Maybe not fully, maybe not yet, but enough to give me another chance. That day, I canceled all my plans. I told my friends I couldn't make it. I told work I needed the evening free, and I spent the whole afternoon with my son. We played a board game we hadn't touched in years. We cooked dinner together, and we laughed. Real laughter, the kind that fills the air and makes you forget the weight on your chest. But even in the joy, I knew there was still a shadow. One night of presence couldn't erase the many nights of absence. One heartfelt promise couldn't erase the times he doubted his worth in my eyes. I had to earn back that trust, and trust, once cracked, takes time to rebuild. Later that night, as I tucked him in, something I hadn't done in a long time, he looked at me and whispered, "Thanks for today, Dad. It felt different." That simple line gave me hope. Maybe he was still hurt, but he noticed the change. And noticing is the first step to healing. When I left his room, I sat in the hallway for a while, in the dim light, realizing how fragile these years are. Children don't stay children forever. They grow, they change, they pull away. And every missed moment is a brick in the wall that forms between parent and child. I didn't want that wall with my son. I wanted a bridge. So I made a silent vow that night. I would never again let a meaningless event come before my son's milestones. I would never again let him wonder if he mattered to me. Because the truth is, no party, no work meeting, no casual plan could ever match the weight of a child's heart waiting to be heard. The next morning, I surprised him with a small gift. Not something expensive, but something symbolic. It was a notebook with the words, "Your voice matters," written on the cover. I told him to use it to write down his thoughts, arguments, ideas, or even frustrations. And I told him that every week, no matter what, we would sit together and go through at least one page. His eyes lit up, and for the first time since that night, I saw pure joy on his face. As he hugged me tightly, I realized this wasn't just about one missed night. This was about redefining what kind of father I wanted to be, not the one who only shows up when it's convenient, but the one who is there even when it's hard, because presence is not about time, it's about priority. Weeks passed after that night, and something inside me shifted. I started noticing things about my son I had ignored before, the way he chewed on his pencil when he was deep in thought, the way his eyebrows lifted when he came across an interesting fact in a book, the way he looked at me, waiting for my reaction every time he achieved something small. I realized he had always been searching for my approval, but I had been too distracted to see it. I began making small but consistent changes. When he came home from school, I would put my phone down and ask about his day. Not just a casual "how was it," but questions that made him open up. What was the best part? What was the hardest? Did anyone make him laugh? Slowly, he started sharing more. Sometimes it was about the debates, sometimes it was about his friends, and sometimes it was just random thoughts. But the important part was that he was talking, and I was listening. One evening, I came home tired after a long day at work. My first instinct was to head straight to bed, but I saw him waiting at the table with his notebook. He didn't say anything, but his eyes asked me if I remembered my promise. I sat down, even though I was exhausted, and we went through his notes. He had written arguments about environmental issues, school policies, even about why kids should be trusted more. I listened to each one, giving him feedback, clapping after he finished, and telling him how proud I was. That night, as I walked to my room, I realized something important. It wasn't the big gestures that mattered most. It was the little, consistent choices, choosing him over sleep, choosing him over scrolling on my phone, choosing him over another unnecessary plan. Those choices added up, brick by brick, building the bridge I had almost lost. Then came the big day, his first school debate. He was nervous, pacing around, rehearsing his lines. I stood by him, offering encouragement. "You've got this," I said. "Remember, you've prepared for this moment. Just speak from your heart." He looked at me, and this time, instead of doubt, I saw trust. He believed me. He believed in himself. When he stood on that stage, dressed neatly, holding his papers with steady hands, my chest swelled with pride. He spoke with confidence, passion, and clarity. Every word felt like a victory, not just for him, but for us, because I knew this moment might not have happened if he had given up that day when I left for the party. After the debate, when they announced the winners, his team came in second place. He smiled, not disappointed, but proud, and then he looked for me in the crowd. When our eyes met, he waved, and in that instant I felt something shift between us. He knew I was there. He knew I chose him. On the way home, he turned to me and said, "I didn't win first place, but I think I won something better." I asked what he meant, and he smiled softly. "I got my dad back." Those words hit me harder than anything else he had said before. He wasn't talking about debates or school or trophies. He was talking about presence, love, and connection. He was talking about me finally being there, not just as a provider, but as a father. That night, after he went to bed, I sat alone and thought about the lesson he had unknowingly taught me. Life gives us endless invitations, to parties, to meetings, to distractions, but the most important invitations are often silent. They come from the people we love, waiting for us to notice, waiting for us to show up. I realized my son's words that first night, "I needed you," were not just a cry for attention. They were a reminder of the responsibility I carry as a parent, to show up, to listen, to value his world as much as my own. And I promised myself I would never take that responsibility lightly again. From that day on, our bond grew stronger. We had our routines, our talks, our debates, and our laughter. I still went to work, I still met friends sometimes, but the difference was clear. He no longer doubted his place in my life. He knew he mattered, and as for me, I learned that sometimes the greatest lessons don't come from books, jobs, or even life experiences. They come from the words of a child, spoken in a quiet living room on an ordinary night after a birthday party. Words that shook me, broke me, and rebuilt me into the father I was always meant to be. Because in the end, life is not measured by the parties we attend or the people we impress. It is measured by the moments we choose to be present for the ones who truly need us. And my son's words will forever remind me of that truth.